Welcome back. Hopefully you have completed some practice problems on adding scientific notation and that you're feeling pretty comfortable. There are some answers on the teacher key, and I'm hoping that you went back and checked it. So we're going to start subtracting with scientific notation, and the procedure is the same. And identifying our exponent is always where we're going to start here. So I have a 2 and a 1, and I still want to take up my smaller exponent and match it to the larger. And remember I said before, this is necessary to minimize the amount of work that you have to do afterwards. So we are going to add 1 and turning that into a 2, but because I'm adding 1, I'm going to add 1 decimal place. My new first factor is 0.4. Now this is times 10 to the second power. I'm going to rewrite my first scientific notation. And now we go back to our original question. Are my exponents the same? And because they are, what we're going to do is we're going to just subtract our first factor. Hopefully you are using calculators. And 2 minus 0.4 is 1.6. This is times 10 to the second power because we still want to make sure we keep our exponents common. And because it is common, you are finished. And let's go ahead and take a look at number 2. So it looks a little bit trickier. Oops, sorry about that. It looks a little trickier now because we have a lot of negatives here going on. And with our negatives, same thing. Just give it a little bit more thought. -6 versus -7, which one is the smaller versus which one is the larger? So -7 is the smaller one. I want to change that to become a -6. In order to do that, we are again adding 1 decimal place. So 5 has a decimal behind it, and we are adding a space by moving it 1 place to the left. And I'm going to minimize some room here by just putting it right into the problem. So this is 0.5 times 10. Now be careful with your integers. Use those calculators. You have an exponent of -7 plus 1, and that turns into a -6. I'm going to drop down my first scientific notation. I want you to notice I am always rewriting my work to keep everything aligned, and it's important to do that because you have to work neatly or there is something that you are going to miss. So now that I have everything rewritten, nice and neat, I can go back to my exponents and say, are they the same? So both of them have -6 exponents. Now we're going to just subtract our first factor. 3 minus 0.5 is 2.5. This is, of course, times 10 to the -6 power. And if you are always taking your smaller exponent and matching it to the larger one, you will never have to convert at the end. So in multiplying and dividing, when we had to keep asking ourselves, is this correct scientific notation? Is this first factor between 1 and 10? You don't have to do that with adding or subtracting if you follow that first step correctly. All right, let's find problem number 3. And this time, when I look at my exponents, I want you to note that we're not just moving 1 space away, we're moving a little bit more than that. And you can move 4 spaces, 5 spaces, even 9 spaces, though we typically don't make you do that many moves on a decimal point. So our smaller exponent is the 9. I want to turn that into a 12. In order to turn a 9 to a 12, that means I'm going to add 3. So my number was 8.1. I'm going to add 1, 2, and 3 spaces, filling in with zeros. So this is my new decimal that I'm working with here, 0.0081. This is times 10 to the 12th power. Dropping down what I have on my first scientific notation. And this is what your new problem looks like. Okay, so Now we are going to subtract our first factor. And at this time, go ahead and plug that into your calculator. So you're doing 9 minus 0.0081. And you should get 8.9919. This is times 10 to the 12th power. And this is your final answer. So let's go ahead and look at number 4, which is our last example. Looking at our exponents of -4 and -2, my smaller exponent is going to be the -4. So I am going to turn a -4 into a -2, and we do this by adding 2, which means I want to add 2 decimal places. So I have 2.2, and moving 1, 2, and adding a 0 there. So my new first factor is 0.022. This is times 10 to the -2nd power. And I'm subtracting that with 3 times 10 to the -2nd power. So we're going to go back and look at our exponents. And because they are the same, we're just going to subtract our first factors. Now, we're subtracting. You need to think about integers just like you did in 7th grade, because now we're getting into our negative territory. Use your calculator. Be very careful if your answer is a negative. So 0.022 minus 3, you should get negative 2.978. And this is times 10 to the -2nd power. Now, 8th graders typically at this time get a little confused because you're going to look at that negative 2.978 and wonder if our first factor has to be between 1 and 10, this number is a negative. Is that between 1 and 10? And the answer is yes. We don't look at the sign of the negative. What we're really looking at is the 2.978. And if that's between 1 and 10, then this is still appropriate scientific notation. That negative in the front is okay to be there. So with that being said, this was your last example for subtracting with scientific notation. This is where we are going to take a pause. I want you to go back to your EE4 packet into the subtraction part and complete some of those problems, and then double check some of those answers with what you have in the teacher key. So on the teacher key, I will be loading a couple of step-by-steps similar to this video, so at least you can see and double check your work and make sure you are getting those right consistently. And if you have any questions, especially for those of you that I am not seeing right now in class anymore, feel free to send me some emails or stop by. My room number is E128. If you want to pop by and just ask quick questions, I am available to you. All right, have a wonderful rest of the day.